So let's actually go back to the code and let me show you what those look like, not on note cards. So we're back in our script. I'm going to go ahead and add some of these variables in there. So we had string name of person. We had float move speed. We had bool box empty. And we had int cards. Now, you can access these variables within the script and assign values to them and all that stuff. So like we say, name of person equals Greg. And there's, again, the semicolon at the end of the line. And so now, name of person has a value in it once this runs. These others don't. Let me show you another cool thing you can do. Move speed equals 4.5 f. Because you got to remember the f for the floating point. So this assigns it a default value. Now we can always come over here and say move speed equals 12.3 f. Now it would not necessarily make a lot of sense to do that inside of start, but somewhere else in the script, based on user interaction or something like that, you could change the move speed. You could also say, remember our friend Mr. Debug Log? So the name is name of person, and the move speed is move speed. Whoops. Now, what you might notice is that this whole thing is actually a string, just like name of person. Now it's a little more fancy, but you could do the same thing up here. Game dev coach. Same thing. There's some easier ways to do that, but I'm trying to keep it really, really simple here. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to switch back over to Unity. So we're back in Unity. It's recompiled. I'm going to hit play, and then all that's going to happen at the start. The name is Greg the Game Dev Coach, and the move speed is 12.3. Now, if we look back at the code, so name of person, move speed was 4.5, but again, here in start, we redefined it. Well, we defined what the name of person was. We gave a new value that overwrote the old value in move speed, and then we printed it out. And of course, this is no longer line 11. Now it's line 23, and that'll always, change as this changes. So that's not a great example, but you got the idea earlier. So with that, we're going to move into some slightly more advanced kind of variables. These two are fairly specific. Well, one of them is very specific to Unity. The other is not necessarily, but you will use both of these a lot on your game dev journey. Speaking of your game dev journey, if you want to join an awesome community of game developers that is like none other, go to thegamedevcoach.com/community. Check out the page there. It's got information about your game dev journey. It is a paid community that I personally run. I brought in other experts I know to help with some of that. There's also other beginners, learners and teachers. That's the kind of people that I have there and the kind of people that I want there. It's very inexpensive. Check out the page for the latest pricing details, because we've got a special going on right now because we're just getting started and first so many people get in cheap. Anyway, it's a really cool place. There's no trolls. There's helpful people. I'm putting out content there. There's exclusive content I'm putting there that you can't find anywhere else. Check it out. That's Your Game Dev Journey. And you get there. Soon I'll get the .com landing page up. But for the moment, go to thegamedevcoach.com, which is my website, /community. Check it out. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. That's programming because, anyway. Variables. Advanced variables. So, game object. And we're going to call it temp.go for temp game object. Now, as I said earlier, everything for the most part in a Unity scene is going to be a game object. The vast majority of things that you put in there will be game objects, more or less. By creating this and then assigning something to it, we can get to all kinds of information like the position or the name or the location or the rotation. We can also manipulate those things and change those things, whether it's enabled or disabled, active or inactive, showing up, change the color of the material, all kinds of stuff. I'm not going to get into too much of that in this lesson. Some of that's a little bit advanced, but we are going to touch on that shortly. The other thing I want to show you is vector 3. So you know from looking at Unity that most of these objects have an X, Y, and Z, right? And this one has an X of negative 3.03, a Y of 0.725, a Z of minus 6.29. This XYZ collection for the position is a vector 3. So let me show you what we're going to do. So we've got our game manager object that's got our first script on there, right? That's what we're editing. Watch this. I'll just make a note there. That is X, Y, Z. All floats. I'm going to make this public. Public meaning once it recompiles, it's going to show up over here. So now temp.go, it's waiting for a game object. I can drag just about anything in the scene in there because all these things are game objects. I'm going to work with our friend the cube, and I can click this and see that that's there. Now it's kind of a one-way street. I can go on the game manager, I can click this to see that. I can't necessarily find that this is used there in here, but for now, okay, cube. Let's go back to the script, and I'm of course alt-tabbing or option tab on the Mac. And I want to, in the start, grab the name and position of that game object. So what we're going to do, we've already got the game object assigned because we made it public, and there are other ways to do that. This is an easy one for now. Because it's public, we were able to just drag the object in. I'll show you why that's really cool in just a minute. So we don't need to define that. That's already defined, but we can get information from it. So if we say the game object name is, and we say temp.go dot name. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to say temp pause, temp position, temp.go dot transform position. And then I'm going to say debug log temp position is temp pause to string. So you can't just say temp.go position, but if you remember, you mouse over this, it says the transform attached to this game object. Now, where have we heard transform before? Oh yeah, right there. Transform position, rotation scale. So we're hitting the cube, and then we're accessing this component of that object. See what it does. Gonna hit play. Gonna start. Variable temp.go of first script has not been assigned. Do you know why? Because I was in play mode. That's right. Everything was blue. Should have reminded me. Didn't. Actually, as I was about to hit it, I'm like, oh, that looks like it's already been pressed. So yeah, again, kids, there's a reminder. Just pay attention to play mode. That's okay. Game manager. So Unassigned reference exception. You'll probably see that a lot, especially if you use some public variables. No big deal. Going to take the cube, going to click it, drag it back in there. So again, that's click on Game Manager, drag cube in there. Now let's hit play. We'll pull that up a little bit. So it gave us the temp position and the name. Okay. Now that's not the position anymore, but it is when we start. What if we pulled something else in there? What if we pulled sphere in there and hit play? Oh, look. Now the name is sphere. And again, remember, this starts basically more or less as soon as you hit the start button. So it's looking at the position when it's up in the air. Minus 2.5, 2.6, 0.8. This is, rounding up a little bit, or it's not showing the full floating point, which is fine. Do one more. Floor. Now this one, because the floor doesn't move, should stay exactly the same. Minus 1.5, 0.1, 1.0. And there you go. Now, do you see what we just did? We just made a script that you can drag different things into, and it's going to interact with that game object because it doesn't know and doesn't care what game object it is. Here's a game object, which gets assigned up here. It doesn't care. Give us the name, get the transform position, throw it out there. This is super cool. Once you start figuring this out, kind of wrapping your brain around it, there's all kinds of crazy stuff that you can do with it. So, dig into that some on your own time. Next, we're going to get into conditional statements. Stay tuned.